now, we're going to hear from Beaver Bauer. Oh my God, Beaver, you've got some fans here.
What's really important to me is the people of San Francisco. And I think San Francisco is a character in my life. The 22 Fillmore is my main artery. It's like my Mississippi River. It has taken me from everywhere I've ever lived to anywhere I'm almost always going. And so I'm really excited to get to show these, and I hope you enjoy them.
This is Beaver Bauer, one of my oldest friends. Beaver and I met, I think, in Union Square about 50 years ago.
Yeah, true confession, I was panhandling.
And I've been a fanboy ever since, following her artistic journey from free performance art with the Angels of Light in the 70s. Then Beaver had quite a career as a costume designer, designing costumes for ACT, Theater Zinzani, and Beaver is going to have a show at the San Francisco Library at Civic Center about a year from now, so you're lucky to get a preview of that this evening. Beaver, tell us, how'd you come to Union Square?
Well, I hitchhiked here from the Lower East Side with two girls and my dog, Saskia. And thank God for the dog, because she took care of us the whole way. And I came here, of course, for the San Francisco dream and looking for someone I was very in love with. And at that time, I'll see you there. And I went and I found him the next day, with no radio, no telephone. I said, I'll go to the Fillmore West. There he was standing in line. And after that, I started, I have to say, crashing around in the Western Addition and living in houses when anybody remembers the redevelopment was going on, getting thrown out frequently. And then at some point, we all met Hibiscus. Hibiscus was like an angel or a spirit that you've never seen before. I've never seen anybody look like that come to earth and land in front of you. He was like a sun, and he pulled everyone into his orbit. He was just a really, really wonderful performer, and he brought us into this theater company called the Angels of Light, and he deemed me and my two gay friends the Flory-Dory Girls. And if you ever watch The Little Rascals, the Flory-Dory Girls do get in drag on The Little Rascals. And so this is one of our posters. We did our shows totally for free. And this was a guiding principle for us that we wanted to do it and share our art with everyone. And we became members of a large group of other communes, and eventually at one point put on a fair at, of course, Douglas Playground with the baseball diamond as our stage. The Angels were a ragtag, eccentric, pageant Seminole theater company. And so we had an intercommunal carnival where there was a massage booth. I mean, it was very 70s, 1972. I am the frog in this, and we had children as our set crew. Oh my God, so you could see these shows were huge pageants, and we made a lot out of cardboard. There's me as the frog. I like to be animals a lot. This was painted by Martin Wong, if anybody knows who he is, this beautiful bunnies and moving set. There's Rodney in the background as the monarch butterfly about to make his entrance. And you can see just kids got up on stage, and we, okay, here, take a flashlight or get that set on and off. I mean, we became very slick at some point. And then we're going to see a little clip of our shows at our studio on Valencia Street. We would do shows there to practice our tap dance and show things that we didn't feel like we're ready for prime time, and have a really good time, and sometimes raise a little money to put on our big shows when we started having to rent theater space. Sometimes we work a year to make these shows. Here we are tap dancing with anybody, if anybody remembers Esmeralda, wonderful singer from No Mercy, singing in the background. And this we just kind of slapped up in our studio. And here's me on the left carrying on and dancing my little heart out. And we did tap classes in our studio for free. This is just a big part of our belief system, was to share this stuff with people. We did gymnastics classes, all kinds of things. This is the Angels of Light girls, and this was our big chorus of girls. We were the Uma Uma girls on a tropical island, and so you can see we really like to get dressed up. I lived in a commune, and I had an allowance of $5 a week. We put all our money in together, mounted these huge pageant shows that were free. So then I moved on to working in the real professional theater. And this is a rendering I did for a production of Aristophanes' The Birds. And we're lucky enough to have my dear friend and favorite director sitting in the audience over here tonight, Jack Fletcher, who I adore above anything. And he had said to me, origami. And so we thought, well, that's great. We're going to get this hard shape of the bird and the predatorial thing, and then the fabric that flowed on wings. And these people all entered on a slide, women's chorus, and Jack had them pounding out rhythms and music with their sticks. Everything in these costumes was made from scratch. The fabric was hand-painted, dyed. The shapes were all made and constructed and wired out of felt and then painted. And here is a picture of them on stage when the whole flock assembled. And so just another little clip of another one of my favorite shows. This is a show called Lou, produced by Brenda Aoki and her husband, Mark Izzo. And these are the red-tipped worms who lived at the bottom of the ocean. And because these creatures lived at the bottom of the ocean, we put these heavy rings at the bottom of them, which is really a lot like they do with their wedding kimonos. And then they had obies, and they closed over like this. And here we go with our red-tipped worms. And, you know, my whole idea for these was that they would move like the Supremes. In the background are the taiko drumming, all kinds of Japanese percussion instruments, and then Mark Izzo blowing on his sax, and it was hot. I thought it was really, really great. Okay, so now we're gonna try to move on to the pièce de résistance, which is the bus queen. This is the woman who kind of kicked it off. I've always been really into talking to people on the street, looking at the people, you know, the odd people, and collecting them in my mind. We would call each other on the phone and say, I saw the white lady today. And I don't know if any of you, but if you lived in 16th and Mission, you would know the white lady. And yes, and she was a black woman, and she painted herself white, wore all white, and she kind of moved like a bird. And we all thought we were blessed whenever we saw her. She was like a dove had come to earth. And this is Shelley, Our Lady of the Rubble. And this is Cauliflower, which was a free newspaper hand-delivered by one of the communes in this circle of communes that we all belonged to that were into free food or food rights, delivering information about different ways to live a different life and trying to base it on a life that's not driven by money and driven by sharing of ideas and time and beliefs. I really realized that people of San Francisco are in my blood. And, you know, I used to draw costumes on the 22 Fillmore or the bus, and then I started drawing the people. So here's my little version of myself on the bus, and I carry a black backpack, and I carry one of these little sketch pads from Daiso, $1.50 each. I could buy lots of them. Very poor quality paper, I don't care. and I started drawing in pen, which was not something I really ever did before, but I really liked it because it made me draw in a new and bolder way because you can't erase it. And so you'll see that there's a bit of a variety in the styles. I'm not trying to make a pretty drawing. I just want to draw people. And how do I choose them? I think I'm asking myself the questions, Peter. I choose them because I have to say sometimes they choose me. Something about them grabs me. It might be the set of their features. It might be, I look at them and I think, are their shoulders sagging? Is it a backpack or is it emotion? Is it freight of feelings? What is it? And I got so into it, and I really love it. And so here's me on the 22, and I shove my little drawing pad in my pack and whip it out. And so I have maybe a minute or two at the most to try and capture the salient features, perhaps, of someone that really strike me. And then they're off the bus, or someone stands in front of them. And so I sometimes finish them further, and sometimes I don't. She's one of my really early people, and I called her Pearl. And Pearl used to go to the Magic Theater, and she used to go to every opening, and she would come in very late and sit in the front row, and she was almost blind. And she intrepidly had herself there, and she intrepidly stayed to the show and listened. And I'd talk to her at the little party after the show all the time, and she just really moved me by the strength and fortitude of her character to get herself to the Magic Theater and go through all these shows. I think she went to the Berkeley Rep also. And she had her hair scudged back and a pearl necklace on her little bun, and would wear a string of schlung silver sequins at the back of her head. Well, this one I saw in the Safeway at 16th and Potrero. And it was very late at night, and I think I was there with my dear friend Joan Raymond, and she had a folded blanket she was clutching in front of herself, holding it really tight, and this kind of little Amish hat with hair. It hung down like telephone cords. It was kind of stupefying. This woman, I call her the oak leaf because I felt like she was so fragile that I could, if you picked her up too harshly, she would break in my hand. But I saw her day after day after day on the 22 by herself in the same raincoat, carrying bags and bags of stuff. And I was obsessed with her. And I never felt like I really caught the blend of the strength in her character and the fragility in her character. This begins a little series I have here, and I've called it different things. Sometimes I called it Hiding in Plain Sight or Masked Before COVID. And these are people on the bus who drape themselves or put things in front of them or do many different things to be there, but they're not there. And this person had a sweater over themselves and then the two sleeves dangling down almost like an elephant truck. Well, this woman was in the front of the bus on the side. I call her the shield. And she had just like a shield, like of possessions in front of her and a bag in front of her and stuff in front of her. And solid sat there. Oh, okay, so I cheat. This is somebody I saw walking down 17th towards Gus's against the fence to Project Artaud. And with a blanket draped over them, just kind of fading into this fence, forever fading. I came back hours later, they were still there. Sometimes I like to draw really fast and capture people who have really odd and interesting angles in their face. I kind of call this one overly cute, but she was very Picasso-esque. This woman had like these incredibly sharp planes in her face, very, very sharp, and her personality somehow really just matched this shape of her face, and I was quite fascinated by it. Okay, this is really hard to explain, this one. And she had tape all over her face, white tape all over her face and draped in shawls. I saw her quite a few times. I asked myself, and I really, for a very long time, never shared these. And I was afraid to share them in one way because I thought it might be perceived as advantageous on my part to draw people in all these different circumstances who I don't know. Do I talk to them? If they talk to me, I do. But usually the thing with the bus is it's just so fast. This is the Immaculate Conception. And I couldn't get over the perfection of every hair in her eyebrow was hand-drawn on her face. Oh yeah, this is a little bit of the hairdo series. And this is Pebbles. And he had his hair up like in Pebbles Flintstone hairdo and wore like those collars that you put on yourself when you get on an airplane, was wearing it like a collar. Okay, so here I go into a little risky territory, but I'll tell the story anyway. And this is a woman I met on the bus on Mother's Day, and I call her Freckles. She had quite a few freckles. And the thing about the bus and the thing that can happen is there might be a philosopher, but sometimes you find that you're going to come up against some of your own bigotry or prejudice. And this is a woman who put it in front of me. And I had a judgment on her because, should I just say it? She was a prostitute. And she had a baby in a stroller, and I thought, whoa, on the bus. And then we engaged in this long story and this talking about mothers, and we had this profound story about, and all of you mothers and fathers probably know this, but there's that club, and it's the Mothers Forever Club and the Fathers Forever Club, and she was a card-carrying member. And I thought, wow, if I hadn't talked to her, she really opened my mind. Oh, another just great hairdo. Twiggy. Oh, Porphyra. Porphyra is a kind of sponge. And this gentleman had his hair shaped into the shape of a sponge. The kicker. He was a 22 Fillmore rider, and he was very angry man. Very, 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 very angry. And his face was always contorting, and he would sit on the bus and he would kick people who came near him, and he would scream. But then after a long time, after watching him a couple times, I thought, well, he's protecting himself. This is what he's doing, Beaver. He's protecting himself. He's not just trying to hurt people. This is how, in his state, that he protects himself. This person I saw a lot up at 16th and Potrero in front of what was the Boston Market down. And she would frequently be wearing not much more than a slip, sometimes just a blanket. And you can see he was really muscular and very, very bony and very hostile. But I drew it and I put this red thing over his heart because I felt just this pain in him. And a nervous little woman on a very crowded bus. This person, how he had himself tied up in knots. And I really thought, he brings his own. I put a black box behind him because I thought he brings a box with him in his body language, and he's trying to hold all this in. And then, this was a beauty. This woman, I was mesmerized by the curves in her face. And she was slipping into like a rhapsodic dream state. And I thought, well, I would never be that relaxed. But she just was incredibly beautiful in her repose and the shape of her face. And this gentleman, who I call Ashes, that the gray spread from his eyes. And he was another incredibly fascinating looking man, that in some ways I felt he was a little bit on the edge of decline and just really compelling. And another just series of curves, in a face that you think is very flat. It was really a symphony of curves, like one began and flowed into the other. So soft and so small and so gentle were these curves in her face that once again I was just possessed by the shape of her face. And, a lot of things grab me about people. It could just be a physical thing, but I feel an emotional connection. Oh, this is the Rain series in San Francisco. This gentleman was wearing a sleeping bag. And this guy was standing up at the park, by the Safeway at 16th and Potrero in the driving rain, and had on one of those, things that you rest your back on, kind of like a huge collar. But he stood there with the most incredible dignity and sense of ownership, like a king. He was like the king of the hill. This person was wearing a suitcase on his head to protect himself from the rain. We're almost done. I moved a little bit onto the story sometimes, and this was a gentleman, and I think there could be a whole series of Chihuahuas and men in the mission, because they love their little dogs. They love these little dogs, and they hold them like babies, affectionate. And so I drew this guy, and it was a very long drawing, so I think I was on my way to PT on the polk, and it was moving slow. This was on election day, and this gentleman got on, and he started spewing. He was spewing the most hostile racial statements. And you know how it is on the bus. Usually people, either they say something back or they don't, but it had everybody just sinking. It was so hostile. Turns out he was a disabled veteran. And then he started talking that he had a gun. And then he told the bus driver to get what. And she said, never in a million years. And then she slammed on the brakes of the bus and kicked him off. And there was a huzzah across the entire bus. This is really early in the morning on the Mission Street bus. And it's like, is she coming home or is she just starting? Sometimes what I have found that as much as I am drawn to the eccentrics, the simple people are as beautiful to me now as the really out there people, and I celebrate them and I enjoy them. I enjoy a woman coming home. I see her all the time. She works at General Hospital probably. She's got a lot of false eyelashes on. She gets on the bus and she's exhausted. She's exhausted and she's falling asleep, and she's got a heavy bag, and she's picked up a kid in a stroller. And you look at them and, usually your eye passes right over them. But I just look at her and think, this is the real people. These are the real people of San Francisco. And what a wealth and depth we have here.
What do you think is particularly special about the 22 Fillmore route?
Well, if for those who take it, it goes from, Hunters Point? Or, now it comes from out here, kind of, it goes through the Mission, the Potrero, the Mission, the Fillmore, and then out to Pacific Heights. So the depth and range of characters on this bus is profound and monumental. And it's always packed to the gills, and it's women with children in their strollers, and, the people with their pants down to their knees, and a lot of people with groceries, and of course the new phenomena of dogs in strollers bigger than an apartment, and, draped with pearls, and, it's just as big a slice of life as you can possibly imagine. And if you were to say, casting director, I want a bus, I want every kind of person in the world possible on it. 22 Fillmore, you got it. And, but you know, it has taken me from everywhere I've ever lived, and so, you know, it's kind of why I call myself the bus queen, you know, because I don't really think of myself as a queen at all, so it's a little bit of an ironic statement to me, but I'm on it all the time, and then when anybody asks me a question, I say, oh, I did it on the bus, or wait a minute, I'm on the bus, or I drew this on the bus, and so that's how the name came.
Tell us about your upcoming project at the library.
Okay. I didn't really want to talk about myself. I wanted to talk about these people, but next year I'm going to have a show at the San Francisco Public Library in November, and it's going to maybe be 20% Angels of Light, some of the Bus Queen, some of other shows I've done, and I'm making 2 installations for it. So I'm 76 now, and I've turned over, or I'm trying to explore a lot of new routes in my life, and one is going back to my art and trying to see myself as a whole new person, and hope it works, I think, yeah. And, are we done? Okay, we're done, everybody. They're running for the aisle. Thank you.
Thank you, Beaver.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Beaver Bauer and a wonderful drawings from the 22 Fillmore.